Hey everyone, it's Meg Cowden with Seed to Fork, and welcome to my August garden tour. So for the last couple of weeks of July, we actually weren't here and we missed what was another extended heat wave. So we got back just a few days ago, and things like some of our blueberries are looking a little sad. We were in the upper 90s with dew points in the 70s, which for us is pretty hot, and we've already been in the 90s quite a bit this season. But on the plus side, we just got home and I did a massive harvest. We did have people helping out in the garden when we were gone, which was great. I probably harvested over 100 pounds of tomatoes. I weighed some of them and I was at about 75, 80 pounds, but there were more that we harvested last night that I did not weigh. So succession planting right now is super important for me and for the garden. And disease pressure is so high in those tomato beds right now that for some of my indeterminate heirloom slicers, I'm actually probably going to make the call here in the next week or so and pull those plants out. And I could utilize that space for some more fall crops, like root vegetables. I could extend things like leafy greens. I could go for something like a broccoli rabe, or any of those kinds of things could be direct seeded right now. So additionally, we've got second successions of corn, second and third successions of beans. I've got third successions of things like cabbages that are in place, and I've got my fall successions of broccoli that are just going in the ground right now into the space where I had my first succession of beans, which is kind of funny this year because I ended up swapping that. So my first succession of broccoli, that now has my third succession of snap beans. And then my first succession of snap beans is where I'm putting my third succession of broccoli. I don't really plan these things out too much. I know that I'm going to have gaps, but it was kind of a funny switch this year. So for me with succession planting, I just want to make sure within my growing season that I don't repeat the same plant family in the same space in any one span of a year. We've also got our corns coming out, and I'll be planting some fall starts there. Either maybe some kale that I've got started. I'm hardening off beets right now, and some more head lettuce as well as kohlrabi and bok choy and nap cabbage. So those seedlings all need a home, and luckily I did just pull all of our onions out. They're now in the garage on our curing rack, but that is quite a bit of square footage, and I always rely on that space as well this time of year as a gap that I can rely on for those frost hardy fall vegetables. So that's kind of really where I'm at. Indoor seed starting is done for the year, really, which is a great relief, but I'm going to be doing a lot of direct seeding now in the month of August, and really trying to make sure that any gaps that are created are filled with things that we can enjoy in September, October, and hopefully even beyond that with things that I will be able to put up in our root cellar. So in addition to that, our orchard, which is behind you guys right now, and I'm going to show you, is really, several of the trees are very flush with fruit. We've got apples on our Snow Sweet, apples on our Williams Pride, and we've just pulled all of the plums off of our plum tree because they tend to split, and so we're pulling them a little early this year to try and prevent splitting. And our Harrelson tree is also just loaded with apples. And yes, you're probably seeing cabbage whites continue to be a problem for me. We spray BT for those, and I catch as many as I can with the net. So I want to just take a few moments to really enjoy all of the life that is really just surrounding us every day of the growing season right now. So I've got flower beds like here that are just 100% flower beds. I've got flower beds interplanted with things like kale. And then I've also got flower beds interplanted with seeds like on my sesame. And then lastly, I've got larger blocks of flowers planted in between either other crops or also strategically interplanted with vegetables. So one of the highlights of the year continues to be the artichokes, and I interplanted those with Thumbelina zinnia, and it's just looking absolutely marvelous right now. So every year is a little different. Last year we had just a bumper crop of muskmelons, and this year the muskmelons haven't really taken off, and I don't think they will at this point. We've got a handful of melons, but nothing like we had last year. But our watermelons, I probably have a dozen watermelons growing in our watermelon bed, and so that is going to be a really fabulous addition to our fruit offerings, starting probably about the end of this month, end of August. They take a while to come into season, but they are so worth it. And I've been freezing them. You can dehydrate them, and of course, eating them fresh is the way to go as well. Our beans are kind of sitting tight. Our winter squash are sitting tight. Our potatoes are sitting tight. We've got quite a bit of disease in some of the varieties. It's always interesting to see what varieties fare better than others. So carrots are another really important fall crop for us, and we've got several successions growing as well. I stagger those. I start with my earliest planting in April, which we've been eating off of since June. Still going strong. I just pull about a dozen or so carrots a week and we eat them. And so we just harvest as we need, and they really do well holding kind of in the field, as the farmers like to say. They hold really well for us, and so I don't worry about harvesting them. I harvest them for about a 6 to 8 week period in summer, actually. And then the rest of our carrots are really for our root cellar, and I'm not going to harvest those until well after a first frost, but before our soil freezes in the fall. And I've got those in several stages of maturity as well. Yesterday, I did a really big harvest, and it was just about filled our outdoor table, and tiny fraction of onions were put in that picture, and maybe about 2/3 of the tomatoes that we had harvested made it into that photo too. So I couldn't even fit all of the food that we harvested into that photograph. So we're kind of in the high season of both thinking about fall, but then also I am going to be very busy processing tomatoes and continuing to make pickling cucumbers, and also I've really enjoyed pickling beets as well. So those are kind of the main things we're pickling right now. Once we get past Labor Day, and we'll still have tomatoes at that point, so in about 4 weeks I'll transition to things like making ketchup, and then also probably making Bloody Mary mix again, which was really fun to make last year, especially because we've got celery in the garden right now, and we've got kind of all the ingredients to make it. We've got paprika dried, which is another ingredient that you need for that. So it's kind of a fun way to really bring the whole garden together. We've got the hot sauce too, actually. So anyhow, I digress. But I hope that you have enjoyed seeing the garden in the beginning of August. And I hope that you are still planting your garden and knowing that you can capture so many more weeks and months of the growing season if you start thinking about your cold hardy crops. And you can learn more about cold hardy crops and fall gardening in my book, Plant, Grow, Harvest, Repeat, which is available everywhere books are sold. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you in September.